Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Today's hero is, yep, that's his name, Catgirls are superior, the filthy weeb, in this Tier 10 domination battle here on the Haven map, in the black version of the Tier 8 tribal class Royal Navy destroyer HMS Cossack. Now, don't get me wrong, the Cossack is a good ship. But it's a good Tier 8 ship in a particularly Tier 10 battle. Although I do always maintain that if you absolutely definitely have to be down-tiered in a World of Warships battle, it is always better to be down-tiered in something like a destroyer, or I guess these days a submarine, because they... Well, it's not true that they can't sink you if they can't see you, because blind fire is a thing, but it's a lot more difficult for them to sink you if they can't see you. And it's a lot easier not to be seen in a destroyer or a submarine than it is in a battleship or a cruiser. So he does at least have that going for him. I'm very pleased to see that Catgirl has turned his anti-aircraft guns off, because even though you cannot be spotted by things like scout planes or patrol fighters, people can still see your anti-aircraft gun tracer and therefore guess that there's a destroyer over there shooting at the aircraft. So, smart move. I'm a little less pleased, given the presence of radar, to see him immediately rushing one of the cap circles right at the start of the battle. Because as well as the fact that there's an enemy radar cruiser in play and he does not yet know where it is, there are also 3 destroyers and a submarine per team, so the chances are excellent, as he's rushing into this cap circle, that he's going to be sharing it with at least 1, possibly more, enemy destroyers. And depending what else is going to have overwatch of this particular cap circle, that could be extremely hazardous to your health. But hey, fortune favours the brave, I guess. Or is it fools rush in? I guess we're going to find out. Catgirl sent this replay in as a potential Game of Throws contender. The more alert among you will realise that this is not in fact an episode of a Game of Throws. Hopefully by the end of the battle, you'll agree with me and understand why. Well, he's in the cap. And so far, things are going well. It's uncontested. So far. And then things start going wrong. He's managed to spot the Tier 9 Greek destroyer, the Katsonis, a couple of seconds before he got spotted in return. But you do not want to be getting into a gunfight with one of those things. That thing's armed with 140mm guns and they only have a 3.8 second reload. He's already suffered a double fire, which he takes care of with the damage control and pops his smoke, allowing him a couple of seconds of more shooting time at the Katsonis, before it does the same, but it's forced him out of the cap circle, and he's thinking about backing up, and then remembers, hang on, British destroyer. Smoke's only going to last 40 seconds, that's not going to be long enough. And there are, yep, torpedoes on the way, Hydro was up. The Katsonis, however, has managed to get himself respotted thanks to the friendly Seattle, because radar is a thing when you try to rush a cap circle right at the start of the battle. Fortunately for Catgirl, the friendly Seattle was right there, good positioning, and the enemy radar was not. More torpedoes aimed at the smoke screen, because smoke screens are torpedo magnets. And those look suspiciously like submarine-launched torpedoes, so yeah, he's still gonna have to be cautious. The team have unfortunately just taken their first casualty, the Jinan, who sank the Katsonis. But the good news is the enemy team have lost 2 destroyers already, which means they only have 1 left, and it's an Osborne. It's one of the new American destroyers armed with 134mm guns, but it's nowhere near this cap circle, which, since I'm assuming, I mean, we know there's an enemy submarine here, but since nobody is contesting the cap circle, he's either outside the cap or he's not on the surface. Either way, just another 20-odd seconds and Catgirl is going to have taken this cap. Oh wow, the Jinan just scored his second kill, like 30 seconds after he died. Torpedoing and sinking the enemy Ibuki, Tier 9 Imperial Japanese Navy cruiser. So that's a useful kill. And then, you're not going to believe it, but the Ibuki does exactly the same thing, managing to torpedo the friendly submarine. What the hell's going on? Friendly Burgoyne manages to knock out the enemy North Carolina though, so on the whole it's actually It's actually going pretty well. The points difference isn't great, but we're talking 2 kills to 4, and both teams are in possession of 2 of the 4 cap circles. The situation down here at Bravo is a little worrying, however. Look at the position of all these enemy battleships. Don't forget, we know there's a submarine out here somewhere as well. We've got a Kremlin approaching the cap circle from the north. In fact, he's about to slip over the border and start flipping it. That's right, a battleship is flipping the cap, and he's doing it mostly uncontested. Well, there's a destroyer here. Why doesn't he sail up there and torpedo him? Well, I mean, yeah, but also, look at the position of the other battleships. And remember, he doesn't know where that submarine is. He's got an Irresistible probably coming through that gap. There's an Adatara down to the southwest, and the Kremlin was clearly not born yesterday. He's got an island between himself and any torpedoes, and don't forget the Cossack only gets 1 torpedo launcher. It can only launch 4 torpedoes. He's got 2 islands between himself and the immediate torpedo threat. So sure, Catgirl could steam up there in order to get a firing angle on the Kremlin with his torpedoes, but he would have to take an extremely wide detour around the islands in order to not pop up within detection range of the Kremlin, and 4 torpedoes probably wouldn't be enough. And then he's almost certainly spotted. He's in the middle of the map with enemy guns at all 4 points of the compass, which means that any escape route is going to have an enemy ship in it, like the Adatara over there, who I believe is shooting at the friendly Seattle. Let me just take control of the camera for a second here. Yep, the friendly Seattle. And unless I'm very much mistaken, those are submarine-launched torpedoes. Yep. So you've got the Irresistible and the submarine over there. You've got the Kremlin up to the north, the Adatara to the southwest. I mean, this is getting... I have to... You know what? You have to take your hat off to the enemy battleships. They're doing the work here. The 3 of them are doing a really, really good job. And that Irresistible is no joke, by the way. And the Seattle's gone down. Finished off by the U-190. Which means the enemy team have just equalised the kills, and they're about to gain the cap circle advantage thanks to the Kremlin over there. You've got a target the size of that, sitting in open water, spotted, obviously, because he's a target the size of that, sitting in open water in the middle of a cap circle with nobody resetting him. Which means it's down to Catgirl. Now, sure, he's in a small target, it's a destroyer, and aside from the U-190, there's nobody to shoot at him other than a bunch of battleships. But, 1, the Adatara is technically a battle cruiser, even though it's in the Japanese battleship line, which means it has really big guns, and that was the Adatara, really big guns with battle cruiser accuracy. And then, of course, there's the Irresistible, which we can't see right now, but which did launch a salvo. The Irresistible is a really interesting battleship. It's basically a Marlborough, but it's armed with more or less the same guns that you get in HMS Goliath. 234mm guns, and he gets 16 of them. These are basically the Royal Navy BL 9.2-inch guns. Then, effectively, the same guns that form the secondary batteries, the deadly secondary batteries of ships like the Libertad. And the Irresistible gets 16 of them, with... And I'm not 100% sure because it's kind of new and I'm not certain of the details, but something like a 10-second reload. You do not want to mess with that if you're in a destroyer. Getting spotted by that thing would be very, very bad. Now, I don't want you to get the impression that this is one of those battles where nobody else on the team is even trying. They absolutely are. If you look at the cap circle at Charlie, you'll see that the other surviving destroyer on the team, the Hull, is flipping that cap, which means the enemy team at least no longer have an overwhelming cap circle advantage. But they are developing something of an overwhelming points advantage. The scores are reversed again, by the way, fairly standard replay bug here in World of Warships. The enemy team are at 476 points with Catgirl's team at 360. Meanwhile, bad news up at Cap Circle Charlie. The Hull just got himself spotted, reset, and chased out of the cap circle by the Kremlin, of all things. I told you, the battleships on the enemy team in this match, they are doing the work. I can't really sing their praises enough. Which is terrible news, of course, for Catgirl's team, because, I mean, aside from the Bourgogne down here with him, there is absolutely nobody stopping the Irresistible and the Adatara. And, of course, the U-190, wherever he is. And it's not like Catgirl can launch a wall of skill to deter these two battleships every minute or so, because he's in a Cossack. It only gets one torpedo launcher. Oh, the Irresistible just took out the hull, so he is now the only surviving destroyer on the team, and the enemy team not only have the points, the caps, but they now also have the kill advantage. And Catgirls can't just sit in the smoke screen because, well, it's a British smoke, so it doesn't last forever, and yep, sure enough, more submarine-launched torpedoes. So the U-190 is coming along this plank as well. Oh, here's the other thing that you need to know about the Irresistible. It has smoke. Normally, putting smoke screen on a battleship is a complete waste of time, because the second they fire their guns, you can see them from the other side of the map, smoke them out. But the Irresistible is armed with 234mm guns, which aren't that much bigger than the guns on a heavy cruiser. So it still has a smoke firing penalty, but it's nowhere near your regular battleship smoke firing penalty. That down there, that's the Irresistible smoke screen. Yeah, it's a battleship that can effectively stealth up, armed with rapid-firing, destroyer-shredding 234mm or 9.2-inch guns. It's a terrifying prospect to have to face in a destroyer. But that's what Catgirls has to do, because with the exception of the Bourgogne, there's nobody else down here to do it. Fortunately, he does have the Bourgogne with him, and the Adatara in particular has also managed to push far enough forward that he's now caught in a crossfire, not just from the Bourgogne, but also from the Montana up to the north. And I don't know exactly what the Irresistible smoke firing penalty is, but given that he's just become visible at a range of slightly less than 8 kilometres, I'm going to say it's about 8 kilometres. And that's about 4 times the range of the Cossacks, which means as long as the Irresistible stays in that smoke, Catgirls can shoot at him without being seen. And I think the Irresistible knows that too. And it's likely that he's also expecting torpedoes, because he's quit the smoke. Here he comes. Ordinarily, this would be a bit of a brown alert moment for a destroyer. However, luck is once again on Catgirl's side, because the Irresistible's guns are all pointing elsewhere. Nevertheless, better safe than sorry. There goes the smoke screen. Great news, by the way, the surviving enemy destroyer, the Osborne, has just been sunk, which means the kills are once again even. And it looks like the Irresistible is about to go down, and it's at the hands of the friendly Bourgogne. Meanwhile, some drama is about to unfold in chat. If you look up there to the north, you'll see an extremely low health Montana just survived a drive-by against a moderately high health Kremlin. A Kremlin, by the way, which just took a big hit, but managed to sink the friendly Hipper. Once again, the enemy battleships in this match have been doing the work. The chat drama that I'm referring to is from the Hipper, who just got taken out by the Kremlin, who just also took out the Montana. The Hipper's a bit salty, because the Montana didn't ram the Kremlin and prevent the Hipper from being sunk. Which is a little selfish, but also a little understandable. The thing is, the Montana tried. He doesn't deserve to be called useless, which is what the Hipper is doing in chat. The thing that you need to understand about the Montana is that while it is in many ways a fantastic battleship, the manoeuvrability is not one of them. In fact, it has the worst rudder shift of any Tier 10 battleship. So the Montana tried to ram the Kremlin, because low health Montana, high health Kremlin, right next to each other, obvious thing to do. But he's in the Montana, so the Kremlin dodged him. So in my opinion, at least, the Montana's got nothing to apologise for. He did what he could. But here's where things start to get really spicy. The Blucher just sunk the Azimuth. There's only 2 of them left. Catgirls is now double sonar pinged with homing torpedoes closing in. He launches himself out of the smoke screen, clears the sonar ping, dodges the torpedoes. The Bourgogne, dropping the depth charge attack planes on the reported position of the enemy sub. There's another sonar ping. He just sealed his fate. He managed to clear the area, and I'm pretty sure he avoided the Bourgogne's depth charges, although there are more coming in. But Catgirls is his big problem now. Although the U-190 is almost certainly aware that there is a destroyer closing in, and if he plans on surviving a destroyer attack, it might be best to get some assistance from his surviving allies, like the Kremlin and the Blucher. And Catgirls is spotted, and it's not by the Kremlin. Yep, submarine at periscope depth. Now pay careful attention to this, because you're probably never going to see a better example of how to survive a depth charge attack on a submarine when you have a battleship and a heavy cruiser shooting at you. He doesn't need to worry about torpedoes from the submarine, they're too close. But if he were to start shooting at the submarine now to guarantee the kill, he would remain spotted for 20 seconds afterwards while getting shot at by a Blucher and a Kremlin. So he trusts to the depth charges, and he does not pull the trigger on the guns, which means the second the submarine dies, he's outside a spotting range. Ah, but Jingles, actually, he could have used the guns, killed the submarine faster, then popped smoke and taken less damage overall. What smoke? He's got no charges of smoke left. What you just saw Catgirls do there was a textbook example of how to remain cool under fire and do exactly the right thing at exactly the right time. I feel pretty confident in saying that most other destroyer captains under those circumstances, myself included, would have probably still killed the submarine, but they almost certainly would not have survived the encounter. And now it is once again a 2-on-2, and with the Kremlin engaged in a gunnery duel with the Bourgogne, he is of course remaining detected, which allows Catgirls the opportunity to farm some damage here, maybe force him to blow a damage control, and flip this cap circle, because God knows the team needs it. The enemy team are almost at 900 points. They have a 500 point lead. Well, they did. So that's good news. Also, Commander perk just triggered. He's got an extra charge of all his consumables, which means he's got a charge of smokescreen back. None of this is bad news. I'm just not sure whether any of it's good enough, because they've bought themselves a bit of time. And they've also bought themselves another cap circle. And there is another cap circle right there, which Catgirls is wasting no time in heading for, so... Well, I mean, it's obvious that he's going to do that. He pretty much has to do that. They're 400 points behind. But if it's obvious to us watching, it's going to be fairly obvious to the Blucher as well. What's not quite so obvious is that with less than 3.5 minutes to go and a 400 point lead, the Blucher doesn't actually need to prevent Catgirls from taking this cap circle. He doesn't need to kill anybody, he just needs to stay alive and run the timer down. Because he's so far ahead on points, even with 3 of the caps, Catgirl's team aren't going to win on points, they need to catch and kill the Blucher. And that's why this is not an episode of A Game of Thrones. Because the Blucher isn't trying to win harder. He is fully aware that with this points advantage, all he needs to do is run the hell away. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. Unfortunately, he got his ass spotted. Fortunately for Catgirls, the Blucher got his ass spotted at the perfect time and position for Catgirls, because it means he can continue flipping this cap circle while keeping the Blucher spotted for the Bourgogne. He doesn't even need to charge out of the cap incomplete in order to keep the Blucher spotted. He gets to have his cake and eat it. So there's a ton of XP and credits for flipping yet another cap circle. And all he has to do is stay within spotting range of the Blucher and not fire his guns, and give the Blucher the opportunity to extend the timer and gain himself a bit more points by sinking himself a destroyer. However, and very unfortunately for the Blucher, Catgirls has already demonstrated his ability to maintain his cool under pressure. I mean, he's thinking about it. You better believe he's thinking about it. Everybody would be thinking about it. I mean, come on, it's one more kill. Yep, Blucher torpedoes. But I can guarantee you that if you were to succumb to the temptation, because, I mean, you know, just one wafer-thin high-explosive salvo, I mean, he's on such low health, one of two things would happen. You'd miss or it wouldn't kill them, and they would immediately erase you from existence, in which case he would go undetected and then would win by points. Or he would fire, scare the shit out of you, you would pop that one remaining charge of smoke in order to survive, in which case he would go undetected and then win on points. So instead of being a sweaty tryhard just in an effort to try to get that last kill, Catgirls instead does the unthinkable and deeply unfashionable and simply does his fucking job, leading to a win, of all things, proving that Catgirls are in fact superior. Who'd have thunk it? Good job. Very good job, actually. Take a look at the score. Remember, he's a Tier 8 destroyer in a Tier 10 battle. Yeah, the votes are in. Even the Russian judge agrees. Catgirls are superior. Commiserations to the Kremlin. Very well done, by the way, to all of the enemy battleships. Well, most of them. They did the work, but it just wasn't enough. With Catgirls are superior, displaying not one, but two superb examples of remaining cool under fire. And it led to the win. And I hope you all enjoyed it, because that's it for today. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.